Upon finishing the last sub meal, I didn't really know what to do with my life, so I was like, you know what? Cheetos, mochi, and anime sounds nice. So I did that. I drove to King Supers, bought mochi and Cheetos, and ate them while watching Jujutsu Kaisen. The family had gone to Denver to view this like hot dog thing Ben was doing, so that left me at home. And while yes, I understand the objective merit in that set of actions was low to negligible, I did get to watch Gojo punch purple holes in monsters, so I stand by my decisions. Upon doing that, I did the last live email and sent it out, and then I went to bed. The next morning, I did Funime, and then after texting like 9 people and all of them being like, yeah, no, I decided to go on a drive by my lonesome and listen to the fantastic, quote-unquote, new Matthew Parker songs. They're actually so good. And honestly, it was probably just as good by myself, but it was vexing having everyone be like, yeah, not interested. And that made me feel like, ugh. So, yeah. You can only excitedly invite others to join you in doing things that you love so many times before you're like, and you know what? I'm sorry I asked. Anyway, it was fine. I still had a very good time. Even if no one else, values singing along to great music. I value singing along to great music. So, ha! Take that, music drive haters. Once I got back, I took a non-trivial amount of time to stretch. I'm a very not stretchy person. I then engaged in another round of Funime, watched this Social Network with Mom, and identified with Mark Zuckerberg way more than any other character, by a long shot. I then went over to campus and had a pseudo-philosophy class. I will say pseudo-philosophy class because Joe couldn't make it to this one, and so Neo Noah and I decided we'd best not to move on without him. Thus, once it all ended, I went on a night walk with music before going to bed. Now, because I forgot to put them in like 2 emails ago, and I don't want to forget them, I'm going to now randomly insert the beautiful pictures of my Minecraft survival castle that Neo took with shaders from his computer. Gaze in awe at the marvels of my tediously created masterpiece. Whoop. Pictures. Pictures. Ah, isn't that so pretty? I feel a non-trivial sense of achievement. Anyway, back to the things that happened at the relevant times. I woke up, created Brian. John came over bearing a great gift of Taco Bell nacho fries, which was very effective at winning my heart. We then sat on some blankets and talked in the front yard, so that was nice. Again, I'm really coming to enjoy John for his INTJ-ness. Like, we get to just, like, talk to each other in such a cool way. He keeps figuring out stuff about himself, too. And I keep having these, like, yes, you understand moments, which are very beautiful. From there, we played a tiny bit of Magic, but not much. And then people arrived for the semi-impromptu river crossing vibe session I planned. It took us a bit to get going. We also ran to the planter box on the way out as I tried to leave. But aside from that, it was smooth sailing. We purchased some food from King Supers, jammed to the fantastic music on the way there, and then began river crossing, which took way longer than expected. See, I tend to forget that not everyone is me. Well, I mean, I don't forget that. It's painfully obvious most of the time. But what I mean is I kind of assume everyone can just do the things I can do. Like, let's take rock hopping across the river. Like, that's an innate skill that I guess I possess, and I call it innate because I never really thought of it before as a skill. But, you just jump across rocks. Easy. But no, apparently for everyone else, it's just not easy. Like, even Grace and Johanna, who are physically fit and coordinated, they had a hard time working up the courage to make some of the jumps. So yeah, we did make it across, though not without some slips and falls. But the important thing is that those were not, those that were not innately gifted pushed through and found the courage within themselves and persevered. So at least that was cool and satisfying, even if their skill level was poor. Since it was already starting to get dark by the time we made it across, we didn't have much time to enjoy the instrumental music or the food we purchased, or even hike up the rock I wanted to hike up to. Still was very nice. And we got some good laughs, so not a letdown of an experience. As it got dark, we all made it back across the river, definitely more proficient than we began with, and we all drove home, once again blasting great music, and it was nice. From there, I had dinner with me, Mom, Caleb, and Grace, and we started watching Arcane. That might become our new dinner movie thing. After that, I caught up with Jordan, and he invited me to this solo D&D campaign thing, which I basically was like, going to play by myself in a world, and it's like a video game, but in writing. And it sounds like a super fun idea, so I have to see how that goes. And yeah, after that, I had some thoughts on meaning making, which I wrote down, and then I hit the sack. The next morning, I woke up at like 5:30 in the morning and tried to get back to sleep, only to largely fail. I then have, in my abbreviated notes, that I established gift exchange, but like, thinking back to that day, I have no idea what that means. 100% drawing a blank. So whatever it is, I did it. From there, I went with, I and Grace drove down to Greeley for her pilot training, and since we got there early, we had breakfast at this quaint little plant-themed cafe. It had a very rural Kansas vibe, but in a nice way, not the gross way. From there, we were just like, there were just like 10,000 model planes hanging from the ceiling, and one helicopter for some reason. And the waitress clearly knew all the people that walked in, and it was like, wasn't good food, but it wasn't bad either. Just like a nice small town vibe. So yeah, we ate there and chilled for a bit, and that was nice. And then Grace's instructor arrived, and so she got instructed while I just listened to Personality Hacker Podcast. Here's a picture of the hangar. The instructor lady was actually a former civil engineer, so it was pretty cool. But definitely, there were a few moments where she started talking and say things like, Bernoulli's principle, and I was like, good explanation! And then look over to Grace, and you could totally tell she was thinking about how Bernoulli sounds like noodle. Like, it was not sticking. So yeah, aside from how much Grace actually learned, the instructor was good at her job. And to be fair, she was also good at communicating emotionally and giving praise. So overall, 4 out of 10 for the 5 stars. 4 out of 5 star instructor. Thus, the lecture portion was over, and we actually got in the air, and here are some pictures of that. Boop. Picture. Let me tell you, the 45-degree turns made you feel like you were just straight parallel to the earth. Like, those were crazy. Also, the instructor decided it would be a good time to teach Grace how to stall, and that was quite the adrenaline rush. But other than those rare moments, it was mostly just slightly more, sickening car ride with a great view. Don't get me wrong, I'm very glad I did it. I think you should, try most things at least once. But I wouldn't say that those few moments were really worth the whole experience. Overall, it was just kind of eh. Once we got back, I helped Grace clean the bugs off the plane, and then we drove home and grabbed a Ziggy's Chai Shake to drink as we went. Man, those are pretty good. Upon arriving home, I did some funime and went over to Neo's and Sydney's for D&D, wherein I continued the lengthy task of chainmailing. Once I wrapped up, nothing much happened. I stuck around for food provided by the lovely Bowens, and after that, I went home and discovered the first pretty good anime I've watched in ages. It had a pseudo-Death Note slice of life vibe, and it was very interesting. So I started that and then went to sleep after getting like 6 or so episodes in. The next morning I woke up and actually got to talk to Sela of all people. See, I didn't mention her earlier, but Sela is Esther's sister. And while I'm tighter with Esther, well, I guess I was tighter, me and Sela just go back just as long, and we're still really good friends. She had a pretty similar life story to Esther, which should make sense. And so she's gone through a lot. But honestly, as we were talking, it sounds like she's grown a ton and really started to understand herself in a way that's really exciting. So I'm actually pumped for the self-improvement she's done. And the realizations she's had, as we were able to catch up, really showed how both of us have grown. The life of the email about Esther, just happened to be the one email she tuned into in 6 months, and she was actually blown away by Alex 2.0, because let's be honest, anyone who knew Alex 1.0 should be blown away. It was a fantastic conversation, and even though we haven't talked in 2 years, I really felt like we were still just as good friends as we used to be back in the day. I think there's a lot of value in friendships like that. Even if the distance and disconnect isn't ideal, just being able to pick up where you left off is really cool. I think it's important to find those kinds of people, and also to be that kind of person. From there, I scarfed down some food without watching anime, mind you. Just mixing things up. And then met with Joe, and we walked and had a very good talk. I was able to largely anti-sad our last walk, and after thinking harder, my new perspective contradicted my earlier one. So justifiably, Joe was much more happy with the new perspective. It was a very good conversation, and I'm very glad we had it. Once that was done, I ate more food, and spontaneously left early for D&D with Neo in tow, because Johanna wanted to talk. This is to skip ahead a little bit, but Johanna and I have talked through it, and I think I'm going to take up something of a mentorship position for her. She's an ENFJ, same as Esther, so I'm uniquely equipped to speak into her life and to do that with a responsiveness and accuracy that I won't be able to do for other people. Plus, I've got the time, and I really do find helping people to be, deeply satisfying. So it seems like a good position for me to fill. Still, there's always romantic concerns, so after talking it over, we decided it'd be best if the relationship was very one-sided, and she didn't try and help me develop my FI, since that's still an immature, area for me. As it stands, the non-romantic girl space friends is something I'm a pro at, but if I start feeling things, who knows? I'll just have to back off, I guess. So it sounds a little like a risky play for her to work on my FI with me. See, ideally we could help each other because, dominant FE is pretty perfectly suited for dealing with inferior FI. I mean, if anything is good is suited for dealing with inferior FI. FI is just straight dumb. But because of gender difference and how things get complicated as a result of it, and I'm also not quite sure I want to fully expose that part of me as well. Yeah, the plan is for me to just help her with her TI and call it a day. Though, I have demanded exorbitant amounts of gratitude as payment for my efforts. So it's not like I'm doing this for purely selfish reasons. Anyway, the point is I left early for D&D and just yeeted Neo at Joe's. Neo's great. And then I drove around with Johanna and we talked until we arrived at the Jameses at around 6:30. From there, I scarfed down some buffalo mac and cheese and proceeded to run the session, which went well. After that, Noah, Benj, and I had a very special gift for Joe since it was his birthday, which for some reason I didn't have the foresight to take a picture of. It was an anime body pillow. That's right, revenge was had. And with the combined financial might of the three of us, Joe received a very tame maple anime body pillow. Not gonna lie, he took the gift far more gracefully than I did, but whatever. Revenge is revenge, even if the psychological damage isn't equivalent. Also, Benjamin and I have agreed this is the last body pillow. The cycle stops here. If we keep going, this is going to get significantly more scandalous. So for all you out there that aren't scandalized, fear not. This is the last you will hear of body pillows. I mean, as far as I have a say. Anyway, after bestowing upon him his new friend, we all then sat down and watched the first episode of Blue Lock and Love is War to decide which the next anime would be, and by popular vote, Blue Lock won. So we've been watching that ever since then. Both were really good options, though, so I wasn't really dissatisfied with the result. Then after that, I drove home with Neo, and we talked on the way back. Oh, at this point, my car battery light came on, this cause of which will be explained shortly. So I just ignored it, and we made it back home, and it didn't matter. We ended up talking for another hour or so in Neo's driveway once we got back, and that was good. From there, I just went to sleep. Next morning, I woke up at an ungodly early hour and just did a bunch of MBTI reading, and then I went down that whole rabbit hole for ages. Then after doing that for ages, I eventually took a break from Funime and then proceeded to try and GB weld the bracket on my alternator back together. Turns out, the bracket breaking was the cause of the rattling that I've heard for ages. Hence, when the battery light came on, that was because the serpentine belt had full-on disconnected from the alternator. Here, I have a picture of the broken area highlighted in red. Of course, at the time, the wooden block, the wooden block wasn't there, and the whole thing was just hanging down, hence the detaching of the serpentine belt and my battery light coming on to say, like, hey, I'm not being charged. But anyway, my original thought was I could just JB weld it, so I stuck the wood block in there and then applied some, like, magic gray sauce and waited for it to dry. During the waiting, I wasted some time, watched some Funime, and then I did something mildly productive and listened to Personality Hacker podcasts. At that point, it had been long enough for the, magic gray sauce that it should have set, so I went back and when I discovered the alternator was like, yeah, no, I refuse. And since adhesive didn't work, I decided the play would be to wedge a block of wood in there and then zip tie the alternator in place for good measure. So I did that. Boop, you can see my handiwork. And there you go. That's what it looked like. Idiotically, I had the tension force from the alternator be in line with the wood's grain, so the wood just split and overall, was breaking. But it still worked. So yeah, I called that a win. And then I went inside to receive pseudo bliss. So, see, a while back, I caught up with Tris, and they were telling me that they liked, to cook. And so, of course, I, with my obsession with the Wendy's Bacon Pub Burger, mentioned the delicacy, to which they responded they might try and make me one somehow. Of course, I appreciate the gesture, but they live in, Missouri currently, so I didn't really expect much. But then, out of nowhere, Mom gets this text from Tris with not only the best knockoff bacon pub burger recipe, but also $40 to buy the ingredients and pay for her time to make me the burger. So that was a super cool gift, and also super delicious. Still not quite the true bacon pub, but I would definitely say it was very close, and I was mostly grateful for the thoughtfulness of it. Oh, and also grateful to Mom and Dad for actually making the burgers. From there, I went over to Neo and Sydney's, where Braden, John, Neo, and I all played Smash Bros. Together like the good old days. It was a good time, but very quickly, everyone regained their skill, and once again, I was the worst, so that was less enjoyable. Still, it was fun to play again. After that all ended, I went home and just did little things until I went to sleep. That night, I actually slept really well, which was a big yay. I then proceeded to kill time thinking about identity as I waited for Johanna to arrive. It turned out the distinction between the predicative and an identitive is massive. And don't ask me if that was an identitive or predicative one. It isn't important. Well, unless it is. Anyway, after having a massive big brain, Grace, me, and Johanna all decided to stretch while watching bad anime, which was a mad activity, but much needed because Grace and I can't stretch at all. And then from there, we took a drive in Grace's car, and I taught Grace and Johanna how to think better. Oh, right, Grace got a car. She paid, I kid you not, $200 for it. Like, Aunt Becky's gesture was basically just like, here, I give it to you. Actually, so not fair. It's a Super Forester, and honestly, a pretty great car. So, yeah, she's super fortunate and blessed. Anyway, we drove around the reservoir area, and I coached Grace and Johanna through reasoning better, and the particular flaws they exhibited as they debated the riveting subject of arranged marriages, if they were a good idea. Grace arguing yes, Johanna arguing no, and it was a good conversation. There were quite a few things that they could both work on, but, I saw some pretty good improvement once, I made them both aware what they were doing poorly. So that was pretty cool. From there, we went on to Vern's and had a conversation that moved to their ideal romantic Myers-Briggs types. And once we got back, I did some research, and it turns out your ideal romantic type, according to Myers-Briggs, is very hotly debated. Like, there's at least 4 different theories, and honestly, all of them sound really plausible. So yeah, I read up on that for ages, and basically got back to them, and I was like, yeah, there's really no consensus on the issue. From there, I watched a movie with the fam, and proceeded to go to on my first run since chemo started, and honestly, I did pretty well. However, it was one of those runs where you just, get into it, and you're, you have like an antsy reserve of energy, just hoping to escape. So I always run better in those states anyway. So I probably actually ran poorly, but the antsy energiness made it normal. Regardless, I discovered that, at least at this point in the chemo cycle, I was far more physically capable than I previously anticipated. So that was a pleasant surprise. And then, once I got back, I did something I'd never done before, which is I actually wrote a rap. I know, breaking, my usual persona with that one. See, actually, way back, before I discovered philosophy and became Alex 1.0, don't ask me what I was before that, I actually used to write songs somewhat regularly. But over the past 5 years or so, I haven't actually touched the activity. Still, I had emotions, and I was like, I wonder how it'd feel to write a song to express these. And the answer was, great! I now understand why people write music. It's immensely cathartic. So yeah, I did that, and then drove over to City Park and recorded myself singing said rap, and then, my voice being dead, I went back and went to sleep. Also, the rap is objectively garbage. I recognize that. But it wasn't about the objective quality of the product. It was about the process. So I deemed that whole thing a success. The next morning, I began to feel the first pains of hunger from the fast I started the night before. At this point, I'm kind of used to the whole process, but it's still distracting when, you try and just be a normal human being. I then studied philosophy until it was time to go for the Weavers for Thanksgiving and their get-together, which me and the family had been invited to. This was the first time that me and the rest of the family as well, got to do this, as we don't really know the Weavers all that well. But nevertheless, I felt a bit socially starved, and I needed a good distraction to pass the time, so this was a fantastic candidate. At the party, I basically just attempted to test my social skills with strangers, and personally, I would say I did pretty well. Mom disagrees, but, she explicitly recognizes because my hyper-confident, loud social style rubs her the wrong way. I think we can safely discount her opinion. Also, Grace agrees I did well, so I think that's a safe conclusion to say I did. Anyway, it was fun weaving into the small talk and hopping into the conversation. The group of young adults were just cool people, and that made it all the better. I tried to guess their types from the conversation, but honestly did so. Not like total failure, but it seems like, I have a tendency to think other people are intuitive when they're actually sensors. So I guess that checks out. But yeah, overall, the social occasion was a lot of fun, and I got to know some of the Weavers a little bit better, and I did catch up with Karen Lawless, which is great. She's an ISFJ, of course, so it's hard to dislike her. I also, like her for reasons independent of personality type, just in case, you were concerned. Anyway, it was a fun conversation and good to catch up. Once I got home, I worked through more of my metaphysics anthology, and then Ben and Johanna came over and we watched some more of the anime we were working through before starting up a drive to the Blue Canyon to go stargazing. But then it got majorly icy, so I, being wise, before being cool, decided to cut the adventure short and turn us around. Once we got back, we all tried to brainstorm activities and nearly failed, and then Ben swept in and offered us a ride in his car listening to music, and that was really nice. I discovered I really like, listening to music with a bundle of blankets up in the passenger seat while someone else drives. Just a very relaxing experience. Here's a picture of the old town lights from the drive. And yeah, once we got back, Ben and Johanna went home and I went to sleep. The next day I had chemo, so yay. But before that happened, I met with this doctor lady that I'm pretty confident was an ENTJ. Like, I very much enjoyed her. Then Mom sat with me as I got my infusion, and I figured out, what I've been experiencing so far has not actually been neuropathy, but rather chemo-induced arthritis, which is the same amount painful and isn't permanent, though, which that's a yay. However, yeah, I have been experiencing some genuine neuropathy in my feet. Like, the baby fell asleep, the whole time, which is very vexing. So yeah, I'm not scot-free, but still much better situation than I thought I was in. Once I got back from that, I wasn't feeling super great, so I laid down and watched some anime for a while. I then took a nap because Benadryl, and after that I watched more anime, talked with people over Discord, took a bath, and watched anime while I did so, and then wrote stuff in my Google Docs, and then went to sleep for reals. That night I got really bad sleep, and I felt significantly more nauseous than I did before, so sleeping was rough. But nevertheless, I made it through. I then read my metaphysics anthology for 2 hours, went on a painfully unathletic walk with Sydney in the snow, because I didn't have the stamina to walk, of all things, and then Neo joined us for a conversation in the living room once we got back. At this point in time, I returned home, technically broke my fast with some chicken noodle soup at first, but mostly proceeded to just eat a lot of really good Thanksgiving food. My family decided to push Thanksgiving dinner back so I could join in, so it was quite nice of them. However, I definitely ate too much, and that combined with my already existing nausea made it and also the fact it was the first meal I'd had in approximately 3 days, did not feel great, not gonna lie. Still, it was Thanksgiving food, so it was probably worth it. From there, I realized, from there was mostly just a bunch of small talk, and then I, having a massive brain, realized that both Grace and Morgan have high NE, and so I got the two of them to work on generating good activities. And man, I've got to tell you, the things I came up with, mostly Morgan, were fantastic. Holy cow, they were just god-tier ideas for activities that made, the sort of activities the squad members came up with just look so lame by comparison. And he's actually so cool. So yeah, did that with Grace and Morgan, and then I watched this pretty anime called Suzume. Confusing storyline, but fantastically animated. And then from there, the three of us and Ben had an in-depth Myers-Briggs conversation until 2:30 in the morning, so that was fun. The next morning, I woke up for church and went there too. Whereupon, the conclusion of the service, I taught Dylan how to play Magic, and he picked it up pretty fast. From there, I went to D&D and did that, and then Sydney brought an IFJ friend to join us for food on Sunday, and so I engaged with her some, and she seemed cool. Once I got home, I spent some time responding to people, took an anime bath, worked on Google Docs, and then proceeded to do some MBTI research before going to sleep, and then I was tired. See, the unfortunate thing was, due to the sleeping early and being on steroids, because chemo, sleeping is not really something I'm good at right now. So I woke up at 1:30 in the morning, and I couldn't fall back asleep. Hence, I ended up instead researching and learning the math for hyperbolic geometry of all things until 4 a.m. And then, of course, I tried to fall back asleep for the next hour, but to no avail, until 5:30. And so I was like, oh, whatever. And I just, got up and started listening to Personality Hacker podcasts and then drawing a map of the fifth echelon for my campaign using hyperbolic geometry. It actually turned out that it was really cool, but I can't show you a picture yet because the players haven't found it yet. So I'll provide that picture only once they get to the map. Around 9 or so, my lack of sleep caught up with me, and I ended up taking a 2-hour-long nap before going to the hospital for a unique experience. I got my first massage. Yep, that's right. One of the things the hospital does is cancer patients get one free massage upon receiving their diagnosis. I think it's a marketing scheme to get you hooked on massages. So, of course, I took them up on the offer, and now, was the time to experience my massage. And I gotta say, massages are fantastic. Holy cow. I actually felt so good during and after that. Sure, there were a few moments that were definitely a little bit awkward, but, as long as you don't think about it too hard, it was all good. And again, it felt fantastic. So much worth the price of awkwardness. So yeah, now that I've officially had a massage, if I were a rich man, I would subsequently become a poor man because I would purchase massages. Anyway, after my massage, I picked up Chipotle using a sympathy gift card someone gave me. Not going to lie, people have been really generous. I've gotten so many little gift cards from people, and, that's really awesome. Forget Christmas. If your love language is gifts, get cancer. After food man with my Chipotle, I read more philosophy, had a conversation about MBTI with Sydney, tried to play Magic with Joe, but totally got distracted as other people were talking about MBTI stuff. I then hosted D&D. Once that finished, we all watched Blue Lock together, and we had another conversation about MBTI stuff that I've been learning, and then I drove home with Neo and discovered my serpentine belt was majorly slipping, because my woodblock fix has mostly failed. So that was fun. Then, once I got home, I ate food and slept. The next morning, I had quiet time, ate the food, walked with Noah and caught up, read my philosophy tome, talked with Toby of philosophy in the library, and then got told off for being too loud. Me, loud, crazy. Then I came home, had food with my family, talked with Sydney a bit before Ratio, before talking with Alan, and basically just listening to what's happening in his life, before unpacking MBTI theory with him. And then I talked with Joe before going to bed. And that night, I finally got a good night's sleep, which was really nice. I also got to have quiet time in the morning, which was also super nice, from which I read my philosophy, did fume, tried to fix my car, but only robustly broke my previous fix, which was a rip, and then I had to refix it all over again. But this time, I think my zip tie plus HDMI cord wrap should work. Yes, I cut off ends of a broken HDMI cord that I had lying around and used it to tie my alternator in place. So now my car is held together by both zip ties and an HDMI cord. I'm so proud of myself. Once I got done, I spent some time jockeying Johanna, and then I just kind of sat around and thought before I went to bed. Next morning, I reached a new low for lack of flexibility. Like, I couldn't bend over enough to get like my waist to a 30-degree angle. It was bad. Hence, I was like, maybe I should start stretching or something. So I did a bit of stretching to the point where I could bend over like a normal human, and then I read philosophy until Benj arrived, and then we played epic table tennis. Me and Benj going at table tennis is actually just pure beauty. Like, we got into a flow state there for sure. After that, Benj brought me Qdoba, which was big nice, and went over to the senior center and talked some before going to the hot tub and asking old people about, the life lessons they've learned. Honestly, it was a really interesting activity. I was kind of surprised at how nice old people are. Then, although they're also willing to share some like life lessons they picked up along the way, which, I'm not sure I learned anything proper. Like, I didn't hear any new information, but it was still interesting to talk to them and, hear their perspective of it looking back on life. And it was definitely something I want to do again. However, other than that, Benj and I got some so-so coffee from their coffee machine, which was 100% downgraded from what it used to have been, I must say. And then we played pool, and Benj clapped me. Absolute domination. Once we got back, we then decided it would be a good place to call it, but man, that was super fun. I really enjoy hanging with Benj. Like, we get to do all the active things. He's just super easy to be around. Plus, he started getting to his, smart thinking side, and that's been super exciting to see. I then read philosophy, lost the monk haircut, and instead went bald, a picture of which shall be forthcoming, but you'll have to see it with my henna tattoo to fully appreciate the transition. I then proceeded to teach philosophy class, but everyone was really distractible, so we made slow progress. But to be fair, progress was made nonetheless. And then once that was done, Joe and I went on a drive and talked about one, and that was a really good conversation. The next day, I got good sleep, studied philosophy, did Funime, spruced up my now functional Phoenix, did more philosophy, did a mini Wendy's run with Alan, Neo, Sydney, and got a new Wendy's pretzel burger. Noticed the absence of the word pub. And don't get me wrong, it was good, but by no means a replacement of its predecessor. However, we did find out that the Wendy's peppermint frosties are pretty fire. Then once that happened, I came home, worked on this update, and did partner stretching with Grace, and then had Funime before going to sleep. As for yesterday, I woke up, went to the Christmas market, which was kind of meh by my estimation, but I did get to talk with Jake about all the MBTI stuff, and he seemed very interested, so that was quite fun. I then went home, grabbed some food, took a bath before going over and hanging out with John and playing some Magic, as well as catching up. And then I drove to the Myers house for their Friendsgiving, where they had a Thanksgiving meal together with the Stankies and the Hoffmans, I think. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, that was pretty fun. Most of it was conversations, but there was also some table tennis, which I was, pretty good at. And overall, it was just a good time. Then upon coming home, Grace and I did our partner stretches, and I shaved my head to make it shiny bald in preparation for Karina's greatness. And today I went to church, did church things, just chat around a singular table like ye olden days. And then I went over to the Myers, played a game of Magic to kill the time before lounging on their island table as Karina made a immensely cool piece of art on my head. Are you ready for this? Prepare yourself for awesomeness. Like, how cool is that? Answer, immensely cool. Karina's coolness factor has significantly risen for me due to the henna tattoo. Like, I understand why people value art. And yeah, other than today, I've done a bunch of work on this live email, some stretching with Grace, and that's basically it. Oh, and one other thing that did happen, which was around 9 or so at night, I got a call from a random number, and so of course I let it ring through. But then when I listened to the voicemail, it was like, "Hey Alex, this is Scraggle. I just scraggled cancer, and I wanted to say I'm so excited you got cancer." And then for the next minute or so, he went on to clarify he was excited I got cancer, emphasis, but not that I got cancer. Anyway. And that was great, except I had no idea who this guy was. Like, I kind of recognized his voice, and obviously he knew me fairly well, but the voicemail cut out exactly when he said his name. So I was like 100% in the dark as to who this guy was. So I sent the following text. I said, "Yo, this is Alex. I heard your voicemail and just want to say thanks for leaving it. Honestly, I'm kind of pumped I got cancer too in some ways. I don't know, it's giving me a really cool season of life. Not to mention, I've read so much philosophy. I think it's cool you broke the mold and, didn't just say the, 'Hey, I'm sorry your life sucks now' response. Honestly, I think it's a way better way of looking at it." And then he responded, "Heck yeah, dude. We should hang out between semesters." And so, even though my phone retroactively filled in contact name for the screenshot, I still didn't know who this guy was. And now he's asking me if we could hang. So I couldn't now go and say, who are you really quick? After the text I just sent, because I found myself in a social dilemma. So my solution? I agreed to hang out with him, regardless of who he was. I mean, any guy who congratulates you on getting cancer is worth getting to know in my book. So here's what I said as a reply. Yeah, I'd be down. I mean, not going to lie. I have way too much free time on my hands. So if you got a time that works for you, just let me know. Also, could you send me your name so I can put you in my contacts? See how I did that? Big skills. So, of course, he did send me his name. It turns out it was Lauren's husband, Mark, one of the hosts of the Bible study me and Ben and Morgan went to way back. And yeah, in the end, I did know him. But it was, a pretty funny scenario to be placed in. So there you have it. I am now bald for realsies, though with the intent of trying to grow back my hair. I have a dragon tattooed on my head. And it doesn't get much better than this, folks. Thanks for reading.